of everyone's time. I think we'll go ahead and get started, and I would like to start with introductions, and we may have some people pop on while we're doing that. But my name is Ellen Shertzer, and I work for the Central Office. My role there, I am the Director of Leadership Development, and this is my 4th year on staff. My primary role is working now with the road. So if everybody on the call can just quickly introduce yourself, the role you play as a volunteer, and what chapter you work with. So I'll just let everybody take a turn.
My name is Richard Parker, and I'm calling from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Robert Morris University, and the Zeta Mu chapter. Thank you.
My name is Justin Keekler. I'm with the Epsilon Delta chapter out of Lubbock, Texas, with Texas State.
Dustin Gorder.
Dustin, thanks for joining us. Who else do we have with us?
My name is Richard Applebaum. I'm with Iota Delta out of Quincy, Illinois.
Okay, great.
This is Dean Maggs in Seattle Gamma Mu chapter.
Okay.
My name's Jonathan Judy from Washington, D.C. with the Delta Sigma University of Maryland Colony chapter.
Great, thank you.
And Dustin Gorder, chapter advisor for Iota Delta Quincy University.
Thank you.
Mark Johnson, Iota chapter at John Carroll in Cleveland.
Anybody else on it?
This is Jeff here, chapter advisor at Beta Phi, Ohio State.
James Leslie.
Right.
Hi.
Hi, who's this?
Hi, this is James Leslie, advisor at Gamma Eta.
Hey, James, how are you?
Good. How about yourself?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for joining us tonight.
No problem.
Well, like I said, I want to be respectful of our time. I think that's it. Is there anybody we've missed?
All present and accounted for.
Okay, so we have a couple things that we're going to scroll through as far as what you all need to know as chapter advisors or on an advisory team to be successful with the road, the journey to excellence. And if time allows, which I'm hoping it does, we're going to spend some time at the very end with question and answer. So we'll move through these slides pretty quickly, and then if you have any questions, we'll take those at the very end. There is a prompt or an option that you can type questions into me, and you're certainly welcome to do that if you'd like, or just ask them at the very end. So here we go. This summer, I don't know how many of you were with us at Karnea, but we unveiled the new version of the road, the journey to excellence. And chapters had the option to opt in to the road at Karnea, and we had a very high success rate. We were hoping for 20, and we had 45 chapters opt in and participate in the road retreat this last weekend. So we brought all 45 chapters to Fishers. They spent a weekend at the central office and learned everything that they could possibly need to know to be successful with the road. So our goal tonight is to provide just a high-level overview of the program and then really to provide some next steps, because some of you on the call, your chapters were with us this past weekend, and some of you, you guys haven't opted in yet. So we'll be able to meet the needs of both. So here is our number 10. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the old road program or the current model for the majority of our chapters, but the road, the journey to excellence, is different. Essentially what we have done is we have taken what is the FAR, the Fraternity Awards and Accreditation Report.
FAR.
And we have looked at what are our students being asked to do as far as programming elements. And then we've taken best practices across the fraternity in new member education and recruitment education, ritual education, and member education. And then we've paired this with what our higher education and industry leaders have told us our students need to know to be successful. And we put this all into a framework, and what we've developed essentially is a template for chapters to utilize to be successful with chapter and individual member programming. So what was the road, which was a set of modules essentially, or workshops that chapters could offer when a consultant came to visit, or programming that they constructed on their own, has now morphed into the road, the journey to excellence. Welcome to do the original road, but over time we're hoping more and more will opt into the new. So there is a difference between those two logos if you see those. I mentioned the framework briefly, and the road, the journey to excellence, is based on learning objectives for new members and then each academic year. So essentially what has happened is we have redeveloped the road program, and this has been a process we've been working on since 2012. A group of volunteers, students, and friends of Delta Tau Delta looked at skills and experiences that we needed, and we've broken them down based on academic year. So here is an example of a student in their junior year, and essentially what we've done is we've identified 9 skills or tasks that they need to learn or complete. And we've also then looked at what are the officers that could work to help our students learn these skills. And we've included that. Then I show on the next column the road section. So you'll notice that some of the road sections are offered in the chapter, so that would be member education, and then some are offered at our national programs like the Charge. And then the last column is the FAR. So again, as I just mentioned, everything maps back to the FAR, and so you can see how each of these learning objectives maps to the FAR. So students who came to the road retreat last weekend, in their member development manual that we gave them, they were given each of the 4 academic years and the new member education programs and the learning objectives like what I've shown you here.
Will we get a copy of that, Ellen?
Is this Dustin?
Yes.
Yes, that is all. So great question. So for chapters who have opted in, all of that information is in Delta Connect, and I can show you how to connect with that.
That'd be great.
So number 8, the road, the journey to excellence, is broken out into 4 sections. So as a new member, you're going to go through 8 meetings, and this is a little bit different than what we normally think of as 8 weeks. Our concept with the 8 meetings is, our hope is, chapters, if they have a shorter time period that they need to initiate men in, that they can take those meetings and they can accomplish everything without the limitation of feeling like weeks and having to have things for 8 full weeks. Recruitment education is 3 workshops. The goal of recruitment education is simply to prepare men to recruit quality undergraduate men 365 days out of the year. Then the men transition into ritual education. Ritual education is essentially the white book. And then the last section of the road is our member education section. And this is really the portion that I showed you, those learning objectives. This is where chapters can really be creative and take some of that information and create their own experience for the members of the chapter. So number 7, we'll focus just for a second on the new member education section. The road, as I said, begins with an 8-meeting new member education experience. There's a couple things that we focus on. We focus on building brotherhood, becoming acclimated to college life, learning information about the fraternity for the exam, understanding the expectations of membership, and preparing to take a leadership role in the chapter. Chapters that opt in receive an outline for each of the meetings, and this includes instructions for activities such as the Big Brother program or our new academic support program, and there are a ton of resources and examples of how to build brotherhood. I will warn you, and we talked a lot about this with the students this weekend, that there are some things that chapters might consider quote-unquote traditions that we're asking them to eliminate or not continue. So anything, and we described it this weekend as anything that's sort of counterproductive to the intentions of the program, we want to help them to figure out a way to do that same or accomplish the same goal, but maybe in a more productive way. Number 6, our recruitment education section. I shared with you our goal is to encourage and educate all members to recruit. After a gentleman is initiated, then they're going to participate in 3 recruitment workshops. These provide the fundamentals of how to recruit. The road doesn't dictate how recruitment happens, and that was one of the misconceptions I think that we heard a lot last weekend. We do not necessarily care if you have the wings night as long as it falls within the policies of your campus and the fraternity policies. What we want to do is we want to teach all members of the chapter how to actively recruit men and get the guys that you want in the chapter and have them come to the wings night. This is not about changing your process, but maybe enhancing your process. Number 5 is the ritual education. And again, I mentioned this is essentially the White Book. Hopefully all of your chapters and colonies have heard that about the White Book. But after recruitment, members will focus on the next 8 months and exploring and analyzing the fraternity ritual in a different way. The White Book is laid out in months, so each month there's a different topic, and the guide should essentially lead the members through discussion. And it covers everything from the ceremonies to the symbols. The questions are really reflection-based, so a lot of times guides might feel like that they don't know the answers to all the questions, but our intention isn't to focus on right or wrong answers. Our focus is really on how does this apply to their lives. And number 4, member education is truly about giving them what they want while providing what they need. The member education section doesn't have facilitator guides, so different than the new member education section, this is really the opportunity for chapters to take and create their own experience. Our goal is that chapters will start to incorporate those learning objectives, again, that I mentioned, in various ways to teach valuable skills. This weekend when we had the road retreat, we were able to walk the men through several activities to demonstrate how this could happen. So, for example, we're getting ready for officer training and transition. It's a great chance to teach the skills of creating a vision or servant leadership or facilitation skills. And so our goal is that the Director of Member Development would look at what are some of the learning objectives that our men need to learn and how can we start to incorporate it into programming that we're already offering. We also encourage them to take advantage of campus programming. There are many speakers that they will never have the opportunity to hear again, and for most cases they're free to students. So utilizing things that are already happening on campus. Finally, the Road the Journey to Excellence is intended to be a partnership among officers. So when done right, chapter leaders will work smarter, not harder, and work together. And again, a large part of our training this past weekend at the road retreat was teaching them how do they collaborate with other officers so that they're not having to work twice as hard with the Road the Journey to Excellence. Our number 3, the officer structure does need to change to allow for the Road the Journey to Excellence. And I've already had several calls with students since this past weekend, and I want to make sure that we have some clear information on this area. Our intention is not to say, here is the model. Our intention is really to work with chapter by chapter to allow for exec boards and chapter advisors to figure out what's the best approach. There were 2 options that we presented this weekend. Either way, we recommend that a position called the Director of Member Development be added to the exec board. That position could be a standalone position, or it could be in collaboration with the guide. So the guide and the Director of Member Development would be one person. It really depends on the size of your chapter and how your chapter functions. Our goal, though, is to have this person sit on the exec board and really be able to function similar to the treasurer, that they would have a committee like the finance committee that would include the new member educator, the director of recruitment, the guide, and the director of academic affairs. We had several questions about what happens with the road chairman, and I think that's something, again, that the chapter would need to discuss. In most cases, that position could probably go away, and the director of member development would take over that role. Again, this is something that the chapter or colony can work on. And if you're an advisor to a group that has opted in, there is an officer manual for the Director of Member Development in the Road, the Journey to Excellence folder in Delta Connect. Number 2, this is something that we struggled with, I think, a lot this weekend, this all or nothing, that a lot of the individuals in the room wanted to take a little bit but not take all of it. And so for implementation purposes, we understand, and we kept using the phrase with the students, you have to go slow to go fast. So to go in guns a-blazing and we're going to change everything probably isn't the best approach to create change in the chapter. But we also want students and chapters to know that the intention of the Road, the Journey to Excellence is to be a continuum or a process that our members go through. And so our goal is that everybody is working toward implementing all 4 sections. And then our last piece that I think is important for you all to know, especially if you had a student attend the Road Retreat this last weekend, they are going to come back excited, energized. They may come back guns a-blazing. They may want to change the world. But our hope for them was to really have the tools and the skills to go back and create positive change. We saw lots of wide-eyed guys that were ready to tackle the world. And I think if you can help us to capitalize on their enthusiasm and energy, we will have much more success with the implementation of the Road, the Journey to Excellence. So with that, I will stop and see what questions I can answer for you about the Road, the Journey to Excellence.
Can you go back?
Yeah, which slide?
Member development. How many positions was that? Let me write those down.
Sure. So our goal is that the Director of Member Development sits on the Executive Board, and that, like I said, it functions similar to the Finance Committee. So I think there's some thoughts on whether these individuals are, quote-unquote, under the Director of Member Development or not. Our initial recommendation is that they serve on a committee, which could be the Road Committee or the Member Development Committee, but they need to work in collaboration. The Director of Recruitment, Director of Academic Affairs, and, well, for some cases, all of these people are on your exec boards. And our intention was not to say go back and remove all of those people from the exec board, but rather to add the Director of Member Development, and those 5 individuals work together as a committee.
Okay, as the Member Development Committee.
Yes.
Okay. Because I thought that's one minute.
What other questions can I answer for you?
I would like to ask, with this new organization, what positions should the new exec board consist of? Does this change any of that?
Great question. So we really left the students the ability to create and design this. And I will really, if your chapter was there, I think they'll come back with all kinds of ideas. The students grasped this piece probably the easiest. And so for the initial rollout, for those that opt in, the only request is that an additional position, the Director of Member Development, be added to exec board. Everything else can stay the same. So you might hear, like I had a conversation today with a student who wanted to create 2 vice presidents and a vice president of programming and the traditional vice president, and those types of ideas, while I think initially at the retreat, they got going and there was a lot of momentum, I think for the sake of change and getting buy-in and really just adopting the program, I would keep most of the structure the same and either add the position as a standalone position, or I would add those responsibilities of the Director of Development, Member Development to the guide. And we have an advisor and one of our co-facilitators for the weekend, Jeff Pelletier from Ohio State, who's on the call, and I know he has talked to his chapter at length about this. And so, Jeff, I don't know if you have any thoughts about that officer structure based on what you saw this weekend and then the conversations you've had with your chapter.
Sorry, I was trying to take my phone up.
Oh, that's okay.
What was your prompt?
Your thoughts based on your conversation with Ben about officer structure.
Oh, yeah. So I think Ellen makes a good point that I think it's really easy for a suggested change for this to sort of snowball into overhauling exec or doing all kinds of other things. I would agree that whoever is the director of this particular committee, whether that's the director of member development or whether that is rolled into functionally what the guide is doing, that it's critical that that person be on the executive board. A lot of our chapters will try to put new member ed on the board. They'll try to put recruitment on the board and other things where I would love to see a move towards, one person representing all of those entities being on exec and kind of carrying out the mission that way. So I just think it's something for, the other thing that I tried to impress upon a lot of the students there was to be cautious about change and restructure just for the sake of change. That sometimes what's needed in the chapter isn't a whole restructuring, but rather just a tweak to some of the things that they're already doing. As Ellen lined the program, for the most part, a chapter that's functioning decently well is doing all of these things. We're just providing them a framework to continue doing it and a framework to report it all to the central office in a good, comprehensive way. So some chapters at first, I think, were feeling that they were going to have to completely overhaul everything that they're doing, and I think by the end of the weekend we had them convinced that we're talking about some minor adjustments and maybe the introduction of a few new things to be fully opted into the road.
And then, Ellen, I have a question.
Sure.
As far as I know that you were talking about making sure that the road is implemented kind of like slowly but surely, is there specific steps that you had talked to the students about how that would look like, or what would be the kind of first step? And then if you wanted to kind of like build it more into the chapter, than to just like do it all at once.
Great question. So again, we realize that every chapter is different. And so what might be an easy win of changing recruitment education might be a challenging win for another group. And so what we focused on this weekend was teaching the skills of the program, or the content of the program, and the skills to create change. So for chapters that have opted in, we really gave them that framework and said, you need to design your steps. So what your student might be coming back to you with is, like an action plan. I think I need to have these meetings with these people. We want to start to have some conversation with the exec board and some key leaders in the chapter. But there was no scripted formula of you start with new member education, and then we'll implement recruitment, and then we'll move through the different sections. Again, we realize that every chapter is different, and the students really took it on them to figure out what those steps should be. So what we've heard so far is there have been a lot of conversations with the chapters that have opted in, and some have had great feedback from their chapter leaders, and the program has been embraced, and some have maybe not had that same welcome with open arms back into the chapter. So there's a lot of coaching and strategy. I spent about 30 minutes on the phone today with 2 different students talking through. So one piece wasn't accepted well, so how do we start to implement the other 3 if that officer really isn't on board with implementing that one? So as an advisor, I think the important thing to do if your chapter had a representative at the road retreat is to sit down with the delegate who came and get the feedback from them. And that's they're getting 30 things to do in the next 30 days. So each day they get just a prompt from us of what they should do, and their prompt tomorrow is to set up a meeting with you. So your role really can be to coach and help them through that process and help to really communicate the positive aspects of the program to the rest of the chapter.
Okay, thank you.
So would you say that we should just wait for them to call us?
I think the more advocates and cheerleaders they can have, the beneficial it'll be for them and their experience. I know, Dustin, your chapter president was there, so the level of confidence, I think, is a little bit higher than if we had chapters that sent just a regular member. They're not even in a positional leadership role. And so as an advisor, I think you take the approach that's best with your student leader that was there. But I think if you can reach out to them and even say, hey, I participated in this webinar tonight, and it sounds like you had a great experience. How can I help? I'm sure they would always appreciate that. They know you should be having this call tonight.
Okay.
If they were paying attention, I should say that. We told them that there was an advisor call tonight.
Yeah, and I would agree. Having, I guess, in my role as an advisor and having seen the students who are there this weekend, that I think they're expecting your help and support, and for the most part, they all seem very ready for it. So I don't think it's stepping on anyone's toes to reach out and, as Ellen said, let them know that we had this webinar tonight, and you'd love to find a time this week to get caught up and hear things from their perspective. And then that might help inform some of the information that you've gotten this evening. If they start talking about elephants for any reason, do not be alarmed. That was something that was part of the change management conversation. So, yeah.
So if any of you are interested in learning about the elephants, we use the book Switch, which is a great read, easy read, and really tried to hit home with them about best practices with creating change. What other questions can we answer for you?
I have one question. How does this work for a colony that hasn't been set up yet? So, my colony they're actually starting to actively recruit towards the end of this month.
Okay. So any colonies that are already in place, so they have recruited members, this isn't their first semester, they had the opportunity to opt in, and I think most colonies from last year participated this weekend. Anyone coming on board from this point forward, they will learn no other way. So they will learn this model, and so they won't know the old and the new.
Okay.
So your job, hopefully, is really easy.
Well, we'll see about that.
But I do think it's to their advantage to be informed enough about this program when they're selling it as what makes them stand out from the other chapters on campus. That colony concept and the opportunity to be part of something new is fantastic, and this is fairly groundbreaking stuff compared to what other chapters on campus may be doing with their members right now.
So we probably have time for one more question if we have one, and then I'll talk a little bit about where we go from here.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
As far as when you're trying to implement like the road as in bylaw form, are there sample bylaws that we can have our guys look at to use to make it more streamlined?
Great question. There are, and we talked a lot about that process this weekend. In the Delts Connect folder, there are some resources as far as the officer manuals. So if you want to look at job descriptions and job roles, you're welcome to do that. We gave the student delegates this weekend a sample, the language for sample bylaw changes, and hopefully they'll share those with you all. And if not, like I said, you can find those in our folder on Delts Connect.
Okay.
Good question. So let's talk a little bit about where we go from here. So about half of you on the call, your chapter opted in, and about half have not. So our goal over the course of the next 3 years is really to get 75% of the chapters to opt into the program. The great part about opt-in is it allows a chapter to come into the program when they think it is the right time. And I think we saw with the large number of chapters that opted in this first year, the students are looking for something more. From this point forward, this retreat that we hosted this last weekend, the Road Retreat, will be an annual event. And the work group, the volunteers and the staff and the students that have been working on redeveloping the program, we were pretty committed that this experience needed to be kicked off with a hands-on training weekend. Part of it is, building a coalition or a group of other people going through the same experience. Part of it is teaching all of these skills to create change. We really want to connect them with the national fraternity. So the fraternity is committed to having that experience being the annual kickoff event. Because of our timing with that, it will be offered each fall. So chapters will have the opportunity to opt in each fall. So if you're not opted in for this year, then the process will happen in the spring that you can sign up again for this next fall retreat. The great part about doing it in the fall is for most of our chapters that have November and December elections, like you just heard, this gives you some time to figure out what do we need to change from our infrastructure and our operations to allow for this to be added or changed before election time happens. So from this point forward, if you've opted in, you're in, and if you haven't opted in, your next opportunity will be in the spring. At the division conferences, we'll cover both ways that you can do the road. So if you're an opt-in group, we'll talk about the journey to excellence. If you're not opted in, we'll still continue to give you the skills that you need to do new member education, ritual education, and recruitment education, but we'll also be promoting the new program. The one last thing that I'll say as we move forward that we know for sure is the chapters that have opted in, there will be continued outreach and support. There will be coaching on an individual level from volunteers to the students that attended the retreat or whoever owns it. And then we'll be doing annual surveys. So there will be 2 surveys that will be sent out to your members, one after the first year and then one right after graduation. And the surveys are simply based on the learning objectives to see how much of that information they have learned as a member of Delta Tau Delta. So that's for right now. That's what we can guarantee as far as we move forward. But as I shared with Jeff and the group that was here this past weekend, the Road, the Journey to Excellence is a process that is new to Delta Tau Delta. It's new to our staff and our volunteers. And so I think things will be changing quickly. We'll be offering new opportunities for those who have opted in. And this will be something that I'm sure 2 years from now we'll look back and say, oh, if we'd only known, or if so many things have changed since then. Because it really is something that's so exciting for the organization, but something that you just have to jump in and we'll see where it takes us. So that's sort of the next steps. I'll stop there and see if there's any questions about where we go from here.
You must be doing a good job, no questions.
Well, those of you who were at Karnea, hopefully you heard all of this. This isn't something new. But if you are not an opt-in chapter and you want to start to prime your students for next year, I have my information here, and I've already had several conversations about, can we have someone from the central office talk to our chapter about it? Can we have support or help? We'd like to redo our new member education program. All of those services and opportunities are still 100% there. If you didn't opt in, it's not that you can't have the services provided by the central office. We want to help you guys get to a point where next year you can opt in. And on the flip side, if your chapter has opted in, please don't hesitate to call at any time. Like I said, a lot of our time is going to be spent on an individual basis coaching each chapter. The consultants are trained on the program. We actually have another training with them on the program via conference call on Friday. So they're calling and asking questions, and if you as the advisor come to any roadblocks or issues with the program, please don't hesitate to pick up the phone and give us a call. I'll now turn it over to Jeff. I had asked him to provide just a couple thoughts from a chapter advisor perspective. As someone who lived through this the last year, he was the advisor for Ohio State when they piloted the program. And I just asked him to give some thoughts about his experience with the road, the new iteration, and the pilot process as a chapter advisor.
Yeah, I think that in working with the chapter last year as a pilot chapter, I think we were sort of spinning our wheels a little bit and not really sure what we were supposed to be doing. And so I think one of the things that will help a lot with this new iteration is the degree of structure that is in place.
what I heard a lot of at the retreat this weekend was that structure was appealing to most chapters. The chapters who maybe were initially resistant to it have, I think, started to come around to see that it provides kind of a nice way to package a lot of the things that they're already doing. My experience as an advisor has been to sort of, really get them to think about the programming that they're doing. How can they leverage that with other things? So we actually spent some time in the evening, and Lee Grace led a great session on thinking about the programming they're doing and how many different elements of their requirements, whether it's the FAR or their own campus-based requirements, can be completed with one simple program. And most groups were able to come up with a program that fit 6 or more different requirements. So having them work smarter, not harder, was definitely definitely something to continue to push them on. So I think as an advisor, just being able to ask some good questions of them and get them to think critically about what they're doing is going to be helpful, and encourage them to utilize existing resources, whether it's resources on campus, reaching out to the central office, reaching out to those of us on the committee that has been working on this for a while to help with some of that idea generation. I would be happy to offer my own myself as a resource if people have things that they want to talk through, whether it's through you all as advisors or even any of your chapters. So,
thanks, Jeff. So, any questions as we start to wrap up our call for Jeff or myself? All right, so if you have opted into the program, like I said, all of the resources are in Delts Connect. So if you have trouble finding those, I can certainly walk you through that. It's just simply through the DocuShare portion. There's an HQ Docs folder, and then you just simply go to the Road, the Journey to Excellence, and I can send a screenshot of that tomorrow. But the goal really is for the students to get in there, to read through the information, to utilize it. They are, like I said, doing the next 30 days where we feed them lots of information. And then the last additional resource that I will share with you is we will offer a series of webinars like this, 30 minutes, pretty quick, for different officers that have a role with the Road, the Journey to Excellence, and those will begin next week. A schedule will hopefully go out tomorrow. And our goal is to provide an opportunity for your Director of Recruitment, Director of Academic Affairs to participate in a learning experience like this. They'll always be recorded and shared if a student can't call in at the time, but that's another opportunity to engage individuals who work with the program and get the tools and the knowledge that they need to be successful. So I'll ask one more time if there's questions, and if they're not, then we'll conclude our call this evening, gentlemen.
I have one question about the chapter spot. It's changed quite, so I don't quite understand with it.
All right. Well, I will try to answer it, but I claim that I'm not an expert on this, so I'll see if I can help. What's your question?
Well, I've gone to headquarters HQ Docs, but what folder you are.
So let me see if I can share. I don't know if you guys can see my screen. Has it changed for you guys?
No.
Okay.
Has your name, email address, and phone number on mine.
Okay. Let's see here. If you go, hold on one second. Let me pull this up. Does everybody have a login and know what Delts Connect is?
Yes.
It is, sort of the shared portal. So
it refers back to chapter spot, though, which is weird.
So let me log in real quick, and I'll pull it up. And I will warn you that I see something different than you see. So when I pull this up, it may look a little bit different than your screen because as a non-member, I don't get all of the perks that you guys get. So can you guys see my screen now?
Yes.
All right. So if you go to Apps,
right,
and go to HQ Docs,
and
see here. So we're going to tab over a few here because we're in the last section. So all of our documents are right there, The Road, the Journey to Excellence.
Whoa, I had to do tab what?
So if you see my cursor there, there's different folders here under the HQ Docs.
Yeah. Well, that's
so I just tabbed over there and went right down there to the end.
Shazam.
Yeah. And so I don't know if that answered your question or if there's more things you want me to show you here.
No, I've been fooling around with this thing, and it's quite different from what it was last time. And I guess I need to talk to Jack because I have like 2 to 3 chapters, and I can't switch between the two, and I'm told I should be able to.
Yep, I would talk to Jack.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Oh, you're all right, because I think both of them have opted into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jeff, you don't have any words of wisdom on this, do you?
I was trying to listen. I think my phone was cutting out when he was asking his question. The easy way that I have navigated to that is because I think there's maybe 2 pages of files. Is once I'm in HQ Docs, there's a search bar at the top, and I just typed in road, and it pops right up.
Okay.
So Jeff, do you work with multiple chapters, or you just work with Ohio State?
I do not. I only have
okay.
one. So, and I think part of the reason they're kept separate is so there's not any inadvertent sharing of things and all that kind of stuff. But that Jack would probably be able to help figure out something for that.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions, I will conclude our call tonight. Again, please contact the central office, contact myself or Doug Russell. I know Jeff is willing to help, but as you get into the road, the journey to excellence, please know that support is there if we're just a phone call away.
All right. Thank you, Ellen.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Good job.